Hello everyone. So a little while ago I made a Portuguese video. Now it seems like it's been about a month. And I had a question that was ignored mostly because of schoolwork and then the hurricane. And then after that we had a lot of cleanup and a lot of catching up to do with school because I was out of commission for a week. And during this week I spent time in Brighton Beach with my roommate who's actually Russian. And so I did a lot of work. I was speaking with his family, hanging out, and going to the grocery store. It was a great experience because even in the grocery store, people just, well, myself being white and Caucasian, they would just assume that I'm Russian because I'm in this area, and I got a lot of practice speaking a lot of Russian and had a lot of good discussions. And so, despite the unfortunate circumstances of having lost power and a lot of damage to our hospitals, I still tried to make the most out of a bad situation. And then when I came back, got back to work here in New York, in Manhattan, and things are starting to get back to normal now. So I've been doing a lot more work on my Russian, speaking, reading, and I've been enjoying the Russian culture a lot recently. But the original question I had was with Portuguese, which I'm still using and practicing over Skype. And the question was, how to go about learning Portuguese. They wanted, I think, general advice. And so the first thing you need to do is take a look at a couple general. You have to ask yourself a couple questions. And the first one is which one do you want to, which version of Portuguese do you want to learn? A lot of people will say, should I learn a European one? They prefer European or Brazilian variety. And my advice simply is that especially if you're an American, just to learn Brazilian Portuguese because it's so much simpler. There's so much, well, it's not simpler in the fact that easier, but it's simpler in the fact that there's so much more material that you can find. It's easier to find native speakers online. If you're not planning on traveling to Portugal soon, I would suggest learning Brazilian, and then later, if you're planning on going to Portugal, to brush up on the Portuguese accent, which I find not to be too difficult to do. It is quite different, but if you go and just listen to some audiobooks or something in Portuguese, you can kind of tell the difference and start to take a look at the new grammatical structures, how things change, how the Portuguese say things versus the Brazilians, the spelling differences. And it's not too incredibly complicated. I think you can learn to switch back and forth. Once you learn one, you can go to the other. So if you don't have any preference one towards the other, I say just pick Brazilian and just get started. Because that's one problem a lot of people have is they make these long distance goals, but they never actually get started. And so the key thing is just to pick a start date today, tomorrow, and just do it. So that's the first question, and that I think isn't too big. The second question is, have you learned Spanish yet? Which is important for most Americans, and how well do you know Spanish? Because if you know Spanish really well, or you went through it in high school, maybe a little bit in college, you can speak it conversationally, you know the grammar, you already know Portuguese grammar, you have a lot of vocabulary that's going to come very easily to you. And so, even more so than if you know Italian or French, although those languages will help you very much in learning Portuguese as well. And so, once you can do that, I would say a better strategy, instead of buying a basic book like Assimil or Teach Yourself, I would say just go straight for audio and going into more reading and authentic material, because you can pick it up as long as you're just listening for the difference in the accent, how to pronounce the words, and you're picking up vocabulary through reading. You'll be able to understand the conjugations, the verb tenses, just because you already know kind of how it functions through Spanish. And that means you'll learn the language a lot faster. So that's what I did. I learned Spanish first, and I would suggest that for most people because it's easier to find people to speak to in Spanish. I don't have any Portuguese speaking friends here that I'd met, I don't know, organically, we can say. I now have used Skype and I've started speaking to some very interesting, cool people from Brazil, but um, I don't tend to like using Skype a whole lot as for generating like a true, friendship or relationship. I feel it's kind of forced especially if it's just used for learning a language. But I've gotten to know quite a few people that I enjoy talking. There's friends that I have when I was learning Spanish that I use Skype for that I still keep in contact with. So it's possible, but sometimes I don't know. I generally prefer just to meet people that live in my city that I interact with here. And so I would suggest learning, if you want to learn Spanish and Portuguese, I'd always say learn Spanish first. There's a lot more Spanish speakers in the United States. And so that's the way I'd go about that. If you live in Europe, you might have different priorities, but this is for, or Asia, I don't know, wherever you're from, you might have different priorities, but for an American, that's what I would suggest. And that's about it. Learning Portuguese for me wasn't too difficult. It was just a matter, it was more of a spur of the moment. I found that I have a friend in the military. He gave me a bunch of free Pimsleur courses that he bought with his military friends. He had all the CDs, so I loaded all the Portuguese ones. And this summer, when I was in Italy one day, I had some extra time, so I started listening to lesson one, and I had fun. I thought it sounded cool. And then I just went through the whole series, and then just started speaking with, finding people to speak with, reading things online on Link. I watched City of God, the movie. That's a great Brazilian film, and listening to Brazilian music. And that's basically all I've done. I've just enjoyed the process and gone with it. So that's the answer for how I learned Portuguese, and well, learned. I'm still learning, and right now I'm just continuing medical school. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and now you have an update on my life, my learning, and what I'm up to. So see you later.